Our protagonist was given a flawed system that didn't grant him a single skill. Yet, he persisted in slaying the weakest monsters and eventually reached level 99 by the time he turned 70. At that moment, his life came to an end. He was overwhelmed with regret, having wasted his years without being able to save his ailing mother or make his younger sister proud. However, contrary to his expectations, this wasn't the end. The system granted him another chance to make up for past mistakes, returning him to his youth with a special advantage: extraordinary luck. How will our hero make use of this blessing? Will he succeed in correcting the errors of his past? That's what we'll find out in today's story. Our story begins on a pleasant sunny day when someone excitedly calls out to his friends, announcing that he has spotted 4 rare silver slime monsters. As the speaker emerges, we see him hiding behind the trees with his friend, warning him to be cautious so as not to startle these rare creatures. But suddenly, they notice another person sprinting towards the silver monsters, prompting them to call out, trying to stop him. However, the person does not halt. Instead, he charges at the creatures and unleashes a series of swift sword strikes. Each strike is lethal, never missing its mark, swiftly eliminating all 4 monsters with flawless precision. Soon we learn that this individual is Yukito, an S-rank player. Due to his success in defeating all the monsters at once, he obtains the silver slime armor, silver slime gauntlets, and silver slime boots. The other players in the area are astounded by his ability to take them all down so quickly, especially since every hit was a critical strike. Moreover, given how rare these monsters are, someone comments that Yukito is incredibly lucky. As for Yukito, he seems absolutely thrilled with his loot, to the point where he wonders if he is dreaming. Everything he has acquired far exceeds his expectations. He then remarks that perhaps this is his reward for the hardships he endured in his past life. After that, we travel back in time with Yukito, discovering that in his previous life, he had reached the age of 85, yet was still an adventurer. At that time, he was inside a dungeon in Tokyo, specifically on the first floor, surrounded by a large number of armed young players like himself. Drones hovered overhead, underscoring the gravity of the situation. Suddenly, someone shouts a warning about approaching monsters, emphasizing that they are inside a dungeon, meaning the creatures could arrive at any moment. The reason for his alarm becomes clear. He had just watched a video on his phone, confirming the presence of monsters in the area, reinforcing the danger of staying put. One person suggests advancing deeper into the dungeon, but another objects, pointing out that countless monsters are emerging from the lower floors, making progress a highly risky move. At that moment, Yukito walks past this person, prompting the young man to urge him to run away immediately, warning that this is no time to be hunting slime monsters. Yet, Yukito ignores him completely and continues forward without a word. The young man attempts to stop him, but to no avail, leading another player to remark that they should just leave him be. He's probably insane. Yukito presses on, indifferent to the comments around him, whether people consider him a lunatic or a useless old man. As the panic intensifies, everyone starts fleeing to save their lives. But amid the chaos, someone stumbles into old Yukito, causing him to fall. At that moment, Yukito recalls his past, remembering how decades had passed since the establishment of the Adventurers Guild. Leaning on his sword to stand up, he continues forward, explaining that the guild operates under a unified system for all players, though the rate of progression varies among individuals. He also clarifies that a player's level increases with each monster defeated, and that upon leveling up, their status in the system improves. Everyone aspires to reach rank 5, the ultimate goal of any player. Yukito continues his explanation, noting that upon reaching this stage, some players acquire skills or magical abilities. This phenomenon has become common among adventurers, yet he himself never obtained any skill or power, making him question why he was an exception. He opens his player status screen, confirming that he has indeed reached rank 5, the level every player dreams of attaining. Yukito recalls his long battles against monsters over the years and realizes that he has given his all. He will not allow himself to lose to anyone. He manages to reach one of the slime monsters and eliminates it, remembering how he spent years hunting weak creatures until he reached level 98. He continues fighting, delivering a fatal strike to another monster, reaffirming to himself that he is the only player who has ever reached this level. However, as he faces the remaining monsters, he discovers that his old sword has finally broken. At that moment, he remembers that the highest achievable level is 99. He knows that he only needs to hunt one more monster. Only then will his long struggle hold true meaning. So, he runs with every ounce of strength left in him, determined to reach the highest level and fulfill his lifelong dream. He grabs one of the monsters and strikes it with his fist, reassuring himself that he is just one step away from his goal. Then, in a desperate move, he bites the monster with his teeth, convinced that reaching the top is his rightful claim. At that moment, suspended between hope, fear, and despair, he receives a notification confirming that he has reached level 99. Overwhelmed with joy, his entire body trembles with excitement. At last, his dream has come true, and he demands his reward from the system for all the suffering he endured to reach this moment. However, he is shocked to receive another notification stating that his status power has only increased by 1 point, rising from 5 to 6, and that's it. Yukito collapses, unable to believe what he sees, screaming at the system in frustration. How could he have gained nothing of real value after everything he had done? Tears stream down his face as he wonders if everything he went through was meaningless, feeling that all hope has completely vanished, leaving only despair behind. At that moment, the monsters others had warned about arrive at his location, surrounding him from all sides. Yukito realizes that this is his end. Tears fall as he mutters that his life had been filled with pain, truly a miserable existence. He recalls how people mocked him in his youth, considering him the weakest among them, and how he was unable to save his mother, the only person who ever valued him in this life. He also remembers how he ended up ruining the joy of his only sister on her wedding day. Then, as one of the monsters attacks, it stomps on him with force, ending his life. Yet, in his final moments, Yukito smiles, whispering that this cruel life has finally come to an end. A system notification appears, officially announcing the death of adventurer Yukito. But suddenly, something unexpected happens. Another notification appears, indicating a major error in displaying Yukito's status. Then, his life indicators begin functioning again, and his heartbeat returns. A new notification appears, stating that a correction and restoration process is being executed, though it provides no further details. But his heartbeat continues to grow stronger. Soon after, another notification confirms that he has received compensation rewards. He is granted 9,999 points for being a unique case, causing his attributes to skyrocket. Suddenly, Yukito opens his eyes to find someone in front of him congratulating him and informing him that he is now officially an adventurer. His vision clears, and he sees a staff member from the Adventurers Guild handing him an adventurer's badge. When he looks at himself, he realizes that he has become young once again. Stunned, he remains frozen in place. The staff member asks if something is wrong. He quickly reassures her that everything is fine, then takes the badge and walks away. However, he later stops to check the date, discovering that it is the exact same day he originally became a registered member of the Adventurers Guild. At that moment, he begins to reflect on what happened, recalling the notifications he saw just before his death, which mentioned a reward he had received. He requests to open his status screen, only to find it unchanged, prompting him to let out a sarcastic laugh. It was exactly what he expected. But then, he notices something new in the menu that wasn't there before. Scrolling down, he finds a section he has never seen before labeled Luck Slot. Shocked, he remembers that in his past life, this was one of the hidden pieces of information unknown to players. Recalling his years of hardship, he can hardly believe what he is seeing. He was the man who endured 70 years of misfortune and suffering. He decides he must confirm things for himself, so he immediately sets out to hunt silver slime monsters to see what will change. We shift to a new scene inside a dungeon in Tokyo, where the area is bustling with people, and tents are set up everywhere. Yukito arrives at the dungeon in search of the silver slime monsters he is determined to hunt. As he sees the place before its destruction, with the adorable slime creatures scattered across the ground, he feels as if he has returned to his true home. However, something else quickly catches his attention, making him wonder if what he sees is merely a coincidence. He soon realizes that he has actually found a silver slime monster, the very target he came looking for. At that moment, he recalls how rare this creature is. In his previous life, he had only seen it once, and the problem was that it would vanish the moment anyone noticed it, never allowing itself to be caught. He carefully approaches, fully aware that capturing this monster grants an immense amount of experience points, yet it is infamous for fleeing at incredible speed. Moving with extreme caution, he reassures himself that he is only one step away from successfully capturing it. But at the critical moment, just before he swings his sword, an arrow suddenly shoots into the area, startling the silver slime and causing it to flee. The person who fired the arrow apologizes, claiming it was an accident. Yukito is furious, realizing that this person just cost him his one and only chance to capture this elusive creature. However, he is surprised to see that the silver slime is still standing next to the arrow, glancing around in an unusual manner. He wonders why it hasn't run away despite the commotion. Suddenly, the monster shifts into an attack stance, prompting Yukito to ready his sword, realizing that this is a rare opportunity he cannot afford to waste. As the monster charges at him, Yukito delivers a precise strike, hitting its core and taking it down in a single blow. The silver slime's body bursts like a balloon, leaving behind its core the exact spot where Yukito's sword had struck on the first attempt. As a result, Yukito's level increases by 4 ranks at once. However, he notices that his sword has shattered, making him realize that the silver slime was stronger than he had anticipated. Now, he needs to buy a new weapon. Suddenly, a strange light appears in the area. When Yukito looks at it, he is stunned, exclaiming, "This is impossible." The reason for his shock is that he has received an S-rank reward, the exact weapon he had always wished for. He discovers that this sword is specifically designed for hunting silver slime monsters and even reduces their chances of escaping by 30%. Overjoyed, Yukito declares that this is an incredible start. He then confidently states that with this sword, he will hunt as many monsters as he wants until he feels completely satisfied. Just as he utters those words, 4 more silver slime monsters suddenly appear before him, making him question whether he is dreaming. But then, to his surprise, the 4 monsters attack him instead of fleeing, something entirely unheard of for this type of creature. Finding himself forced into battle, he is certain that defeating all of them at once is absolutely impossible. As he launches his attack, he considers how remarkable his new weapon is, though he is still uncertain. However, the moment he starts fighting, he is taken aback by his own skill. His hands move effortlessly, every strike is lethal, and he eliminates the monsters with a single blow each. Afterward, he notices a light similar to what he had seen earlier, only to realize that he has received a full set of combat armor. Yukito collects his new rewards, still unable to believe that he managed to defeat all the monsters so effortlessly. Later, we learn that Yukito continued hunting for about an hour. During that time, he successfully captured 10 of the rare silver slime monsters. Each time he finished off a group, another would appear, until he reached his final count. Every monster he defeated rewarded him with rare and valuable items, until his inventory was completely full. After everything that had happened, Yukito could no longer deny the truth. The luck slot that appeared in his status screen was indeed real. After confirming the truth of the matter, Yukito felt overwhelming joy. He lay down on the grass, gazing at the sky as he reflected on his new life. Raising his hand toward the sun, he contemplated the power he had gained, realizing that he now had the ability to become someone remarkable, someone who could bring happiness to his family. He thought of his sick mother whom he had lost in his past life, but now he knew he had a chance to save her. Of course, he hadn't forgotten about his younger sister either. He could finally make it up to her for the harsh life she had endured. Suddenly, an important thought struck him. Did he even have a home to return to? He had completely overlooked this issue. He recalled how he had lived alone for 70 years in his past life, but now he longed to return home and be with his family. At that moment, a deep sense of longing overwhelmed him, and he sprang to his feet, dashing forward in excitement, eager to see them again. He ran tirelessly until he reached his old home, standing before it in disbelief. He had finally returned. Stepping inside, he climbed the stairs, recalling that his apartment was on the 2nd floor, though he wasn't sure which door to enter. He hesitated in front of the doors, remembering that he had been homeless for the latter half of his past life, making it difficult to recall which one belonged to him. But then, his eyes landed on the nameplate, where he saw his family's name beside the number 203. At that moment, he finally remembered. This was indeed his home. Without wasting another second, he rushed toward the door to open it, but suddenly a wave of nervousness washed over him. He paused, trying to calm himself, yet he couldn't understand why he felt so anxious. Taking a deep breath to regain his composure, he finally decided to open the door and reunite with his family. Just as he reached for the handle, the door unexpectedly swung open from the inside, revealing his younger sister standing before him. She greeted him with a warm smile, as if he had just returned home on any ordinary day. But Yukito couldn't hold back. He embraced her tightly, overwhelmed with joy at seeing her safe and well, calling her name with excitement. Nozomi. Nozomi looked bewildered by her brother's strange behavior, asking if this was some kind of hidden camera prank. She playfully asked him to let go, but Yukito refused to release her. He realized in that moment that this time he would never allow anything or anyone to take his loved ones away from him again. Later, Yukito sat down with Nozomi and shared everything that had happened to him. Nozomi was thrilled by his story, her excitement growing as she listened. Then she eagerly asked if they could also save their sick mother, using his newfound extraordinary luck. Yukito smiled, assuring her that was exactly what he intended to do. All it would take was some effort to make it happen. We transitioned to a new scene. Yukito sets out the very next day to sell the rare treasures he had acquired from the dungeon. With the wealth he amassed, he gains entry into an auction where he bids on the most powerful healing potion, a high-tier elixir capable of curing serious illnesses, for his mother. Next, we see Yukito taking Nozomi to the hospital, where they visit their mother to check on her condition. Their mother is overjoyed to see them, asking how they have been, but Yukito simply smiles and tells her that the real question should be about her. Nozomi then steps forward, handing their mother a selection of her favorite sweets, prompting her to express her gratitude. However, she gently scolds them, asking them not to do such things again, insisting that what matters most to her is that they take care of themselves instead of spending money on gifts. Yukito reassures her with a warm smile, telling her that she never has to worry about money again, ever. Nozomi excitedly adds that they have another surprise for her. When their mother curiously asks about the surprise, Yukito presents the healing potion and asks her to drink it. Nozomi eagerly explains that Yukito earned the money through his dungeon adventures and was able to purchase this special elixir for her. However, their mother appears shocked. Her son had only just started his career as an adventurer, so how could he possibly have gathered such a large sum of money so quickly? Yukito smiles and replies that he was just lucky, then hands the healing potion to his mother, asking her to drink it. She takes the potion and drinks it, and almost immediately, she feels a significant change in her body. Yukito and Nozomi eagerly ask how she feels now. Their mother responds, saying that she suddenly feels lighter than ever before and can breathe with ease. Yukito is overwhelmed with joy. Nozomi, unable to contain her excitement, jumps up in celebration of their mother's recovery, amazed by what her brother has done, and tells him that he has accomplished something incredible. Their mother, however, comments that the potion tasted absolutely terrible, causing Yukito to chuckle as he hands her some sweets to make up for the unpleasant taste. As the days pass, the symptoms of her illness gradually fade, and it no longer affects her body as it once did. After a period of rehabilitation and physical therapy, she is finally allowed to leave the hospital and continue her recovery at home. She is overjoyed as she returns home with her children, expressing how it feels like a dream. But Nozomi reassures her that this is not a dream. It is reality. One day, while washing the dishes, their mother expresses how happy she is to be back home with her family, saying that there is no better feeling than this. Nozomi then turns to Yukito excitedly, telling him how glad she is that their mother has fully recovered. However, Yukito responds seriously, saying that while it is wonderful, it is not enough. Nozomi asks why he would say that, and with a somber expression, he explains that the healing potion they acquired was only temporary. It does not completely cure the disease. Shocked, Nozomi asks what they can do about it. Yukito tells her that they need to find a legendary item classified as L rank. Yukito gets up and picks up some dishes, explaining that what they need is something like the elixir. Nozomi responds, saying she saw something about it on TV. The world's #1 adventurer was the only person who had ever found it. Yukito confirms her statement, explaining that reports claim the elixir can heal all illnesses, even those on the brink of death. However, it is located in the deep levels of the dungeon, below the 50th floor. He goes on to say that the biggest problem is that it cannot be purchased. Nozomi immediately understands why, saying that it must be an incredibly rare and unique item. Yukito nods, explaining that such extraordinary items are usually restricted to those who find them. They can only be obtained by defeating one of the powerful dungeon bosses. Nozomi asks if that means they have to find it themselves. Yukito confirms that this is their only option. As she dries the dishes, Nozomi asks if he can really make it to the deep floors beyond the 50th level. Yukito responds bluntly, saying that under normal circumstances, it would be impossible. Anyone attempting it would end up dead before even getting close. Nozomi feels a chill of fear and insists that it's too dangerous. But Yukito looks at her with confidence, saying, "I said under normal circumstances." At that moment, he glances at his mother, who is still focused on her chores, and realizes that what he has now is not just luck. It is also the result of the deep knowledge he gained from his past life. He recalls that the elixir might also exist on the upper floors, but such occurrences are extremely rare. Then, another thought strikes him. The legendary boss on the 20th underground floor, the ancient golem. He remembers that whoever manages to defeat this terrifying monster is rewarded with the legendary elixir as a rare prize. However, the problem is that the appearance of this boss is itself incredibly rare, making its reward all the more unique and valuable. As he becomes lost in thought, he heads toward the refrigerator, recalling that in his past life, the ancient golem's emergence was such a rare event that he had only heard of it happening once. But as he opens the fridge, he considers the fact that his luck is now entirely different. If his luck is truly real, then he is certain that he will be able to find the elixir. At that moment, Nozomi watches him out of the corner of her eye before giggling and saying that his scheming look is back on his face again. Yukito is taken aback by her comment, asking if he really looks that sly when he's deep in thought. Nozomi laughs again, then shrugs, telling him that it doesn't matter. What matters is that she is sure he can accomplish anything he sets his mind to, no matter what. Yukito feels happy knowing that his sister believes in him, and he tells her that the outcome is already decided. However, he mentions that there are a few preparations that need to be made first. When Nozomi asks what he means by that, he explains that everything has a loophole, and it is crucial for him to identify it first. The scene shifts to Yukito holding a picture of himself with his mother and sister, recalling that he had ordered some essential supplies before heading to the dungeon's lower levels. The first of these supplies was equipment. We then see him taking his silver slime sword, which helps him strike fast-escaping monsters, along with the silver slime bracer, which reduces incoming damage by half and can be used 3 times. As he prepares to leave the house, Nozomi sees him and asks if he is heading to the dungeon now. When he confirms, she questions whether he plans to go with only that equipment, pointing out that most warriors wear much heavier gear. Yukito acknowledges that she is right. This is the standard approach for warriors. However, his status level is still too low to equip warrior-class gear. At that moment, he thinks about his status display and realizes that while it enhances human potential, the only thing he can boost right now is his luck. According to his status data, he cannot equip himself with heavy armor for this mission. The only weapon he can use effectively is the Great Slime Sword. However, he also realizes that he has a major advantage: the numerous skills he has acquired by leveling up. He decides to activate the Warrior skill, which grants him the ability to execute a triple critical attack. Nozomi then comments that she now understands. He is going to level up and strengthen his status first. After a brief pause, she mentions something about the 5th floor. At that moment, Yukito immediately recalls the 5th floor she is referring to, known as Alice Crown. As he leaves, he tells her that the monsters on that floor drop a special reward when defeated: the magical fruit. Before he steps out, Nozomi reminds him to be careful and hands him a box containing his meal. She then smiles, saying that while he might find plenty of magical fruit there, he will still need real food. Yukito takes the box from her, thanks her, then waves as he opens the door, telling her he is heading out now. We transition to a new scene where Yukito has already arrived on the 5th underground floor of the dungeon, Alice Crown. At that moment, he recalls what he knows about this floor. It is covered with plant-type monsters, making it a dangerous area that most people avoid. However, it is still considered a relatively simple floor, and many adventurers have managed to clear it before. Since he has a map of the area, it won't be too difficult for him either. Following the map's guidance, he navigates his way to the lair of a creature known as the Trent Monster. It becomes clear that these creatures excel in setting ambushes, as they rely on camouflage, disguising themselves as ordinary trees. Yukito crouches down to pick up a small rock from the ground, remarking that while these monsters are skilled at blending in, their mimicry is not perfect. He then throws the rock at one of the trees, explaining that if one looks closely, they will notice that its leaves lack veins. Sure enough, as soon as the rock strikes the tree, it begins to move, revealing its claws and eyes, exposing itself as a massive monster. As it lunges at him, Yukito swiftly wields his silver slime sword and lands a critical strike, slicing the creature cleanly in half. He then comments that if one can recognize their ambush tactics, these monsters are actually quite easy to defeat. Immediately after, Yukito notices a magical fruit, his reward for defeating the first monster in this area. He picks it up and takes a bite, noting that it has a faint mix of pear and apple flavors, though he is not particularly concerned with the taste. What truly matters to him is its effect on his status, which is why he immediately opens his status display to check whether it is increasing. As he does, he realizes that thanks to the magical fruit's enhancement, even he, despite his weak starting status, has the potential to become much stronger. Yukito continues hunting treant monsters, and each time he defeats one, he consumes the magical fruit it drops. However, after repeatedly eating the same fruit, he grows tired of the monotonous taste. So he takes out the lunchbox Nozomi had prepared for him and starts eating. After finishing his meal, he wants to check whether he has reached the maximum growth limit, only to find that he has finally achieved the intermediate warrior level. Satisfied with his progress for the day, he decides to leave and head back home. But suddenly, he senses rapid movement nearby and immediately stands alert, calling out to whoever is there. He quickly discovers that there are others on the 5th floor with him, and it is clear that they are not friendly. One of them tells him that he shouldn't be taking over another hunter's territory like this, and his companion adds that since he is new to the trade, they will teach him some professional ethics. However, Yukito immediately realizes that these two are not hunters at all. They are thieves who target and kill other hunters. He directly asks if they are here to rob adventurers. One of them responds shamelessly, confirming it, before mockingly calling Yukito an arrogant rookie playing around with his expensive equipment. The other thief chimes in, suggesting that Yukito hand over his valuable gear, equipment that seems far beyond his level. If he complies, they might consider letting him live. Moments later, one of the thieves is seen lying unconscious on the ground, while Yukito casually remarks that everything went exactly as expected, feeling relieved. He then explains that the bee-sting strike, which the thief had used against him, is a skill that can only be learned upon reaching level 25, meaning his opponent was at a higher level than him. He further elaborates that bee-sting strike guarantees a highly accurate hit, making it nearly impossible to evade. However, the downside is that the skill reduces attack power by 30%. Fortunately for him, thanks to the silver slime tears enchantment on his clothes, he had up to 3 chances to reduce the damage he received. As a result, the actual damage he sustained was only 30% of what it should have been. He adds that had he not been lucky, he would have suffered a serious wound to his abdomen. At this point, the remaining thief stares at Yukito in fear, muttering that he never imagined his partner, Yamada, would be taken down in a single strike. Yukito then points his sword at him and tells him that if he surrenders, he might consider letting him go. However, the thief grows furious and retorts that Yukito is underestimating him too much. He boasts that for someone like him, dealing with warriors like Yukito from this distance is an easy task. In response, Yukito calmly sheathes his sword and acknowledges that the thief is correct. There's nothing he can do to him from this range. The thief laughs mockingly, asking if Yukito has decided to surrender. But Yukito confidently replies that he would never do that. He then reaches into his status screen and pulls out a beautifully decorated tree branch adorned with flowers, announcing that he will use a staff instead. The thief bursts into laughter, his expression turning sly as he asks if Yukito even knows what he is holding. Yukito replies that he knows exactly what it is, stating its name, the Madness Staff. He explains that he obtained it recently from a treant monster that did not drop any magical fruit. The thief chuckles again, assuming that Yukito is nothing more than an amateur rather than a skilled warrior. In his mind, he considers the fact that while the Madness Staff is indeed a rare item, it activates magic randomly, making it completely useless. He then adds that its effect is entirely based on probability, meaning Yukito's chances of successfully casting a beneficial spell are extremely low. The thief quickly calculates Yukito's odds of success and failure, concluding that failure is the most likely outcome. However, he glances at his unconscious partner on the ground and considers that if Yukito somehow achieves a success rate of even 30%, that alone would be an incredible stroke of luck. Even so, he reassures himself that casting a precise spell with the Madness Staff is nearly impossible. The thief also considers that he is wielding the enchanted fireball weapon, a mid-tier magic spell, and he is certain that Yukito will not be able to counter it. Even if Yukito somehow manages to cast a mid-tier spell, which is an extremely low probability, his magic would have little to no effect against the thief, who possesses exceptionally powerful enchanted gear, far beyond level 50. Based on all the calculations he has made in his head, he is filled with confidence, reaching a single conclusion. As an experienced mage, he is guaranteed victory under any circumstances. Now fully convinced of his superiority, he decides to put an end to Yukito's so-called beginner's luck and aims his weapon at him. He then launches a massive fireball toward Yukito, who remains standing still, not even flinching. The thief smugly tells him that he has finally unleashed the fireball, then winks and announces that he is now ready for his own spell as well. At that moment, the magical branch from the treant tree begins to glow, surrounded by a strange aura of energy. Yukito lifts the branch, causing the energy around it to gather, forming an enormous surge of fiery power that fills the air with overwhelming intensity. Suddenly, this immense energy concentrates, transforming into a colossal fireball that hovers directly above Yukito, seemingly under his complete control. Once the fireball reaches the size Yukito desires, far exceeding all expectations, he directs it toward the fireball the thief had launched. Upon witnessing this, the thief collapses to the ground in sheer shock, unable to believe that his own fireball has been completely erased without a trace. He struggles to comprehend what just happened, mumbling that it is impossible for Yukito to have cast such an advanced spell, a meteor of that magnitude, especially since the probability of it succeeding was no more than 0.05%, essentially non-existent. What he fails to realize, however, is that the giant flaming meteor is not finished yet. It is now hurtling directly toward him. Desperate, he tries to convince himself that what he is seeing is just an illusion, a deceptive trick caused by a mirage spell. But in the next instant, reality hits him. He can feel the heat intensifying as the meteor draws closer. He lets out a terrified scream, pleading with Yukito to stop it. Moments later, the entire area is engulfed in flames, completely devastated by the impact of the massive fireball. The scene shifts to the thief lying on the ground, his clothes burned by the flames, struggling to catch his breath amidst the smoke and scorching heat. Meanwhile, Yukito remains standing, still holding the enchanted branch, but he notices that it has caught fire. He blows on it to extinguish the flames, then tosses it to the ground, apologizing to it while commenting that everything that just happened was nothing more than an incredible stroke of luck. He then looks at the two thieves sprawled out before him, confirming to himself that he has defeated them. However, he also realizes that he cannot simply leave them here in this condition. Cutting some vines from the surrounding trees, he thinks to himself that tying them up might be uncomfortable for them, but it is the best course of action. He then binds the thieves tightly, ensuring they are securely restrained before deciding that he is ready to leave. With that, he begins dragging them behind him, ascending from the 5th underground floor all the way back to the surface. As soon as he arrives, he hands them over to the authorities, who take charge of the rest of the proceedings. The investigation lasts a long time as officials work to uncover all the details of the incident. Because of this, by the time everything is settled, it is already late and the sun has set. Yukito, exhausted, finally gets a chance to rest. The next morning, he heads straight to the guild to submit his report on what transpired. Upon arriving at the designated reception desk, he apologizes to the guild staff member for the delay in submitting his report, explaining that he was caught up in the events. She then asks if he is Yukito. When he confirms his identity, she informs him that the police have already briefed the guild on the entire situation and proceeds to commend him for his efforts. Yukito feels relieved, knowing that he won't have to go through the hassle of explaining the whole story again. But suddenly, the staff member surprises him by congratulating him on his achievement. She then announces that he has officially been promoted to a silver rank adventurer and hands him a new emblem signifying his new status. Yukito is taken by surprise and cannot fully grasp that he has actually been promoted to silver rank. He asks the guild staff member if there has been some kind of mistake, as he doesn't believe he has accomplished anything worthy of such a promotion yet. It becomes clear that advancing from one rank to the next is not an easy feat at all. Even the most talented players typically take around 3 years to level up from one rank to another. To achieve such a promotion, an adventurer must collect specific required materials and defeat powerful monsters, thereby earning enough contribution points for the guild to qualify for a rank upgrade. The staff member reassures Yukito that there is no mistake, nor has he been confused with someone else. She explains that the 2 criminals he apprehended were found to be members of the Red Arm. Hearing this name, Yukito immediately remembers that the Red Arm is a notorious and highly dangerous criminal organization. He then asks the staff member if this means he has accumulated enough contribution points to qualify for silver rank. She confirms this, telling him that capturing those 2 was an incredible achievement. She further explains that the 2 thieves he subdued were as powerful as silver rank adventurers. This revelation stuns Yukito. At that moment, he recalls how confident and strong they were during their fight, realizing that he could have faced serious trouble against them. He then chuckles and tells the staff member that it was all just good luck, nothing more, before accepting his new silver rank badge. The staff member smiles and tells him that humility is another trait that distinguishes silver rank adventurers. She also expresses her curiosity and excitement about seeing his progress on the 10th floor. It is then revealed that the challenges adventurers face and the dungeon floors they can access are determined by their rank. Copper rank adventurers can only go as deep as the 10th floor, while silver rank adventurers can venture down to the 30th floor. As for gold rank adventurers, they have no limits. Yukito fastens his new rank badge and returns the beginner badge he had been carrying. He then tells the staff member that he intends to begin clearing at least the 20th floor. She is delighted by his enthusiasm and encourages his determination, but also warns him that the 20th floor is somewhat difficult. She advises him that if he is considering taking on such a challenge, he should not attempt it alone. Yukito thanks her for the advice before leaving. As he exits the guild, he reflects on how he has been promoted much faster than he originally expected. He wonders if his encounter and battle with the thieves was merely a stroke of luck. At that moment, a stranger approaches him and asks for a moment of his time. Yukito turns to find an elderly man standing near the guild hall. He stops and asks the man what he needs. The old man gestures toward the wanted posters of the 2 thieves displayed on the wall and asks if Yukito was the one who caught them. Yukito confirms this and explains that the 2 had attacked him first, but he managed to turn the tables and defeat them. Upon hearing this, deep emotion washes over the old man's face. He then takes Yukito's hands and thanks him profusely for what he has done. Yukito is caught off guard by his reaction, but soon notices that the old man has begun to cry. The man then pulls a piece of paper from his pocket, gripping it tightly, and reveals that those two criminals had killed his son. He explains that the police were never able to catch them, but now, thanks to Yukito, justice has finally been served, and he can finally have closure. Yukito is deeply moved by the old man's words. He tries to reassure him, saying that he was simply doing his duty as an adventurer. However, the old man insists on expressing his gratitude and even bows before Yukito, despite his attempts to downplay his role. Tears stream down the man's face as he says that now, at last, he can visit his son's grave and bring him the good news. Yukito stands still, watching the grieving father walk away, reflecting on the fact that, in his previous life, he had never been thanked for anything he had ever done. Looking down at his hands, the very hands that the old man had grasped so tightly in gratitude, he quietly acknowledges that, for the first time, he is experiencing something truly meaningful. At that moment, Yukito recalls that the world is destined for destruction, just as it was in his past life, when he was already an old man. But now, knowing what the future holds, and being aware of the looming catastrophe, should he attempt to change fate? He quickly dismisses the thought, reminding himself that he is not some unrivaled hero, he is just a slime hunter. He lacks the strength to believe he can save the entire world. However, he begins considering his current priorities, and the most important thing before anything else is saving his mother's life. We then transition to a new scene, a strange cavern dimly lit by flickering torches, with a table in the center covered in an array of sharp weapons. A massive built man suddenly slams his fist against the table in a furious outburst. He roars in anger, refusing to believe that Yamada and Hashimoto have actually been captured. From his words, it becomes clear that these are the very two criminals Yukito defeated and turned over to the police. The man is seething with rage, realizing that this will tarnish their gang's reputation. Worse yet, he won't be able to pay the tribute he owes to their leader, the big boss. His eyes burn with hatred as he glares at the newspaper, where Yukito's photo is printed alongside the article detailing the criminal's arrest. He vows that he will not let Yukito bask in his victory for long. Grabbing one of the knives from the table, he drives it into Yukito's image, declaring his intent to kill him in revenge. But moments later, he sets the knife aside and picks up the newspaper again, cautioning himself to be careful. After all, Yukito managed to defeat both of his men single-handedly. Rising from his seat, he acknowledges that Yukito must be strong to have accomplished such a feat, but no matter how powerful he is, the man has his own methods. He then reaches for the scarf hanging nearby and wraps it around his head, muttering that now that Yukito has become his target, he will no longer leave anything to chance. The scene shifts again, now showing Yukito standing on the 15th underground floor, surveying his surroundings as he remarks that this is the peak of the Lone Death Mountain. As he moves through the area, he observes its rugged terrain, narrow pathways, complex twists, and unstable rock formations. Meanwhile, another group of adventurers can be seen in the same location, discussing their plan to split into two teams. At that moment, Yukito considers how difficult it is to move as a group in this harsh environment. He also realizes that in such a place, it would be easy for someone to disappear unnoticed. He recalls reading in the guild's manual that rumors suggest this area is often used as a crime scene. He then pulls his sword free and returns it to its sheath, just as he notices a massive bird diving toward him at high speed. Even as he prepares to strike, his mind remains focused on his goal, progressing through the levels to reach the 20th floor. He then delivers a critical slash, killing the bird instantly, reaffirming that he will acquire all the skills he currently lacks on this floor. He recalls that his original plan was to level up by hunting silver slime monsters, but after capturing so many, they have stopped appearing altogether. He then encounters another monster and swiftly takes it down as well, reminding himself that his focus should be on numbers, eliminating as many enemies as possible. Determined to maximize his gains, Yukito continues cutting down monster after monster without pause, executing his strategy to perfection. As a result of his consecutive victories, he starts receiving a stream of rewards, including a new warrior's equipment set consisting of a bow, a sword, and a pair of gloves. Unbeknownst to him, someone is watching his every move, a member of the gang seeking revenge against him. The man carefully observes Yukito, confirming his identity after noting that he is fighting alone, wielding the silver slime sword and lacking a shield. Seeing his confidence, the man seethes with rage, finding Yukito's audacity infuriating. How dare he hunt in his territory so boldly? However, the man decides not to attack Yukito just yet. He concludes that the best approach is to wait until Yukito is off guard and ambush him at the perfect moment. So he continues watching him closely until night falls. Yukito lights a fire to keep warm and illuminate the area, then sets up his tent on the mountain. The man, still observing from a distance, notices this as well. His annoyance grows, realizing that Yukito might stay on this floor for an extended period. But then, a sinister smile creeps across his face as a brilliant idea strikes him. At that moment, he decides that he doesn't even need to take direct action against Yukito. He has a better plan. Without hesitation, he rushes off to execute it, confident in his extensive knowledge of the area. He reflects on how the world follows a structured ecosystem, and just like that, the world of monsters has its own ecological balance. Reaching the nest of a giant bird, he finds the mother perched protectively beside her chick. Seizing the opportunity, he destroys the nest and kills the small chick, which had been feeding on insects. This marks the first step of his plan, to reduce the population of predators. The second step is to increase the number of prey. To do this, he heads to a site where insects, the primary food source for birds, are found. There, he scatters an abundant supply of food he had gathered earlier for them. He believes that monsters reproduce at an accelerated rate, and that disrupting the food chain will lead to an uncontrollable surge in prey numbers. Afterward, he sits in his usual hiding spot, knowing that it is only a matter of time before his plan comes to fruition. Then, gripping his weapon, he acknowledges the brilliance of his strategy. It will appear as nothing more than a natural disaster, an unfortunate accident that could befall any adventurer. Leaving his hideout, he convinces himself that this will simply look like bad luck, just another lone adventurer overwhelmed by a massive swarm of monsters. He continues executing his plan, satisfied with the fact that this method will eliminate Yukito without drawing suspicion or attracting the attention of the authorities. The final step comes when he releases a Class C repellent, an element known for driving away insects. Opening the pouch he carries, he scatters the repellent over the predator insects below. Immediately, the insects, now multiplying uncontrollably, begin fleeing in massive numbers, desperate to escape the source of the repellent. Watching this unfold, he grins with satisfaction. Then, with a sinister chuckle, he mutters that the swarm is now headed straight for Yukito, hoping they will devour him completely, leaving not even a single bone intact. Meanwhile, Yukito remains focused on hunting a monster, determined to sharpen his skills and increase his kill count as planned. But suddenly, he hears an eerie sound, one he cannot quite identify. He then notices that the sky has darkened unnaturally. At first, he assumes it is just a cluster of thick clouds, but he quickly realizes that this is not the case. As the ominous mass approaches, the truth becomes clear. It is a colossal swarm of ferocious flying insects known as deathcasters. Seeing the sheer number of them, Yukito immediately sheathes his sword, understanding that facing them alone is impossible. Without hesitation, he takes off running, knowing he must find others to help fend off this monstrous swarm. However, he has no idea where to find a strong enough group of adventurers. As he dashes forward, a distant memory resurfaces. He recalls hearing about a supply base somewhere on this floor in his past life. The conversation had been about how, ever since the establishment of Triangle Mountain Base, clearing the Lone Death Mountain summit had become significantly easier than before. Someone had responded, mentioning that this base was located within the Red Earth Cavern. Realizing that the floor guide he had studied contained no information about this base, Yukito quickly begins scanning his map, searching for the location of the Red Earth Cavern. Yukito heads toward the location, but upon arrival he finds a steep drop blocking his path, forcing him to take a detour. However, given the urgency of the situation, he decides to descend the slope directly, using his sword to stabilize himself and ensure a safe landing without sustaining any injuries. Once he reaches the bottom, he notices that the color of the soil is distinct from the surrounding terrain, but he isn't entirely sure if this is the right place. To confirm, he begins shouting loudly, calling out to any adventurers inside, warning them of an imminent monster attack and urging them to come out and assist. However, there is no response. Nothing happens. Meanwhile, the monstrous insect swarm draws dangerously close to his position. Realizing he has no other choice, he raises his sword and starts striking the cavern wall, determined to break through. He shouts that this is an emergency and that he will not hesitate to force his way inside if necessary. Still, no one responds. But suddenly the wall begins to crack under his blows, creating a large opening. Peering through the gap, he confirms that he has indeed found the Red Earth Cavern. But what he sees inside shocks him. A large group of people lies on the ground, bound and stripped down to their undergarments. Yukito stands frozen, unable to process what has happened to them, who is responsible, or what his next move should be. For a moment he wonders if he has accidentally barged in on some bizarre ritual or private event. But then he notices that they are all restrained, with their hands tied and gags placed over their mouths to prevent them from speaking. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he immediately draws his sword and prepares to enter the cavern. Moving swiftly, he dashes between the captives, expertly slicing through the ropes that bind them. As soon as they are freed, the captives express immense gratitude, telling Yukito that he has saved them after they had lost all hope. When he asks what happened and who is responsible, one of them explains that they were ambushed by a group of thieves and lost consciousness after being struck by incredibly powerful attacks. A woman among them interjects, stating that they were not killed immediately because the thieves intended to sell them. Another person confirms her words, suspecting that they had fallen into the hands of human traffickers. Yukito listens carefully as the rescued adventurers discuss their fate, realizing that this place, which was supposed to serve as a support base for adventurers, had instead been taken over and turned into a crime scene by these bandits. He begins to wonder if he has accidentally stumbled upon an event that was destined to happen in the future. He recalls that in his past life, the authorities were supposed to capture some adventurer thieves in this very place within a short time. Following that, efforts would begin to establish this site as a proper adventurer support base. But it seems that he has arrived earlier than when those events were originally meant to unfold. He also remembers that, in his past life, he never paid much attention to the events happening around him. His sole focus had been hunting slimes for 70 years. Since his sense of time was delayed by nearly a decade, he used to view anyone in their 40s or 50s as mere children compared to himself. But realizing that he is getting lost in unrelated thoughts, he decides to postpone those reflections for another time. Looking at the freed captives, he understands that this unexpected turn of events has left him with only one viable option: to use them in the upcoming battle against the monstrous swarm. He calls out to them, acknowledging their shock and distress, but urging them to listen carefully. He points toward the approaching swarm and informs them that they are facing an imminent disaster. An enormous horde of deathcasters is about to descend upon them. At that moment, the swarm finally reaches their location. The freed survivors step out of the cavern, and upon witnessing the sheer number of insects, they are left in stunned silence. One of them hesitantly asks Yukito if he is certain that these are just deathcasters. Another voice speculates that this might be what is known as monster panic, but a female adventurer interjects, stating that even if that were the case, the numbers this time are beyond anything they could have imagined. Yukito addresses the group, explaining that, as they can see, there is no time for debate. If they want to survive this danger, they must cooperate with him. One of them asks how they can possibly fight back, while another points out that running away is not an option given the overwhelming number of monsters. A woman expresses her fear, stating that survival seems impossible, especially since they have no weapons or equipment to defend themselves. Another person agrees, reminding the group that the thieves had stolen all their gear. However, Yukito reassures them that the lack of equipment is not an issue. He then opens his inventory and pulls out a massive stockpile of weapons, remarking that he has so many that they've been gathering dust from lack of use. He lays out all the weapons in front of them, telling everyone to choose what suits them best. The group is stunned by the sheer amount of equipment he possesses. Their astonishment grows when he tells them that he can even transfer ownership of the weapons to them if they wish. They gape in disbelief, asking if he is serious, as these weapons are of much higher rank than what is typically found on this floor. One of the women comments that these weapons are extremely rare, while her companion wonders how Yukito managed to amass such an incredible collection. At that moment, they begin scrutinizing him, questioning among themselves who he really is, as none of them have ever seen his name in any known rankings. After the initial shock, everyone starts picking the weapons they prefer. One man grabs a sword, prompting his companion to complain before settling on a spear instead. Meanwhile, some choose protective armor, believing it to be more crucial than weapons. The person who picked the sword is ecstatic and remarks that if he were to sell it, he would make a fortune. Yukito then asks if they are ready to assist him and fight under his command, emphasizing that his request has nothing to do with the weapons he provided them. One of the women hesitates, questioning their next move, but her companion reminds her that Yukito had just saved their lives moments ago. It's only natural that they support him. Others join in, pointing out that he not only rescued them, but also provided them with high-grade weapons and equipment. One woman tests out the bow and arrows she received, then firmly pledges her allegiance to him, ready to follow his orders. Another adventurer also agrees to join, stating that he refuses to become easy prey for the incoming swarm. At that moment, Yukito steps forward and calls out to the group, thanking them for agreeing to follow his lead. He then surveys the area and quickly realizes that the cave entrance is narrow, something he can use to their advantage in the upcoming battle. He explains that the bottleneck at the entrance will prevent the monsters from swarming in all at once, forcing them to fight in smaller numbers at a time. He then instructs them that their top priority now is to thin out the swarm as much as possible before the situation escalates. With that, everyone begins preparing for battle, while Yukito stands at the front, gripping his weapon. In a firm voice, he declares that the time to fight has come. At that moment, the monsters start flooding into the cave. Yukito takes the lead, cutting them down with precise sword strikes, swiftly eliminating each one as he steps over their fallen bodies. The rest of the adventurers fight behind him, using the weapons they selected to fend off the creatures, pushing through the narrow entrance. Meanwhile, outside the cave, an enormous horde of monsters gathers, but they struggle to enter due to the restricted opening, slowing their advance. However, as the relentless assault continues, the monsters begin striking the entrance, causing cracks to form in the rocky walls. Due to their overwhelming numbers, the passage starts widening. As the entrance expands, more monsters begin pouring in simultaneously, catching the adventurers off guard and increasing the pressure on them. Seeing the never-ending swarm, one of them shouts in disbelief, exclaiming that the monsters just won't stop. It's as if they are infinite. Yukito hears similar remarks from the other adventurers and notices that despair is beginning to take hold of them. At that moment, he realizes that their plan has not yielded the results he had hoped for. Doubt creeps into his mind as well. Can they really withstand this overwhelming number of monsters? Just then he hears a cracking sound from above, followed by small rocks falling from the ceiling. One of the adventurers shouts a warning, alerting everyone that the cave ceiling is about to collapse. Yukito orders them to retreat, but without breaking the defensive formation they had established. Moments later, a large section of the ceiling caves in, allowing the monsters to flood in all at once, forcing the adventurers to scatter. They regroup in formation once more, only to find the monsters now spread throughout the entire cave. One adventurer expresses concern, pointing out that, if this continues, the monsters might bring down the entire mountain. The group turns to Yukito for a new plan, realizing that if things remain as they are, their fate will be... But before they can finish, Yukito's attention shifts to something else. He spots another opening within the cave and quickly recognizes it as an entrance to an abandoned mine. However, he also knows that the mine is incomplete and structurally unstable. It could collapse at any moment. At that moment, he notices a scattered pile of dynamite sticks near the mine entrance. It dawns on him that the thieves might have left the dynamite behind while attempting to expand this place into their own base. Without hesitation, he rushes toward the dynamite and picks it up, realizing that they can turn this into an advantage. A notification appears, confirming that Yukito has obtained raw dynamite. He immediately calls out to the adventurers, explaining that there are scattered dynamite sticks throughout the cave and instructing them to search and collect as much as they can. The adventurers spread out, searching the area. One of them finds a batch of dynamite, acknowledging that it can be used as a weapon, but a sense of unease spreads among the group as they gather the explosives. They are still uncertain about how exactly they will use them. Yukito and the adventurers continue battling the Deathcasters for hours on end. Yet, despite all their efforts, the monstrous assault shows no signs of stopping. The creatures keep swarming with relentless aggression, as if they are endless. As the battle rages on, the monsters destroy nearly 2/3 of the mountain peak where they are fighting. The destruction caused by the monsters has now left the cave exposed from both sides. On the far end of the cave, two adventurers stand frozen in fear. One of them, her voice trembling, states that they are completely trapped. On the other side, more adventurers display clear anxiety. One of them admits that she has exhausted all her stamina. Her companion responds by pointing out that the surrounding cave walls won't hold for much longer. Yukito surveys the scene, assessing their dire situation, desperately searching for a solution. Then, suddenly, he realizes that they now have only one option left. He calls out to all the adventurers, instructing them to hand over all the dynamite they managed to collect. One by one, they begin handing it to him. The first adventurer who does so remarks that he doubts this amount will be enough to wipe out the monsters. Another adventurer hesitates before handing over her portion, voicing her skepticism that the dynamite will have any significant impact. It feels like a mere drop in the ocean. As the rest of the group surrenders their collected explosives, a sense of hopelessness lingers among them. None of them believe that this will be enough to stop the overwhelming swarm. At this moment, Yukito formulates his final strategy. He intends to use the dynamite to collapse the entire area, burying the monsters under the rubble. He retrieves all the collected dynamite from his inventory, considering the fact that these creatures have extremely low intelligence, meaning they tend to attack the biggest perceived threat. He begins strategically placing the dynamite in key locations, recalling that monsters always target the individual who has killed the most of their kind. In this case, that person is none other than Yukito himself. At that moment, the monstrous insects manage to break open a significant hole in the cave ceiling. One of the adventurers screams, warning everyone that the entire place is about to collapse. Yukito has already finished positioning the dynamite in its designated spots, so he shouts for the adventurers to run immediately. Everyone begins fleeing the cave at full speed, but one of them pauses at the exit and asks if Yukito intends to sacrifice himself by detonating the explosives alongside the Deathcasters. Yukito gives him a confident smile before replying that he knows exactly what he's doing and simply asks him to trust him. As planned, all the remaining monsters gather around Yukito, preparing to lunge at him. Standing his ground, he reflects that there are moments in life when a person must take risks, and this is undoubtedly one of them. He then issues a command to the system, activating the full detonation of the dynamite. A notification pops up, asking for confirmation, and Yukito immediately confirms the request. He then leaps from the cave's upper section toward the lower cliffside, determined to end these creatures once and for all. But suddenly, a new notification appears, warning him that the success rate of the detonation is only 50% since he lacks the proper demolition skill. Yukito realizes that his level is insufficient to use such an ability, but he decides to gamble on his luck. Another notification pops up, revealing that because the materials used are raw explosives, the success rate has dropped to just 25%. Now, Yukito is left with only one choice: to hope that luck is on his side. Then, a new notification appears, confirming that the detonation has been successfully triggered. Yukito is filled with relief as he realizes his plan has worked. At that moment, all the dynamite pieces explode simultaneously, annihilating the monsters inside the cave while Yukito descends into a nearby crevice, safely avoiding the blast radius. As he falls, he uses the debris from the explosion to propel himself mid-air, leaping between the falling rocks to dodge the incoming attacks. Then, he executes the Great Layered Strike sword technique, delivering a devastating blow that eliminates a large number of the remaining insects at once. The battle seems almost over, but then he spots a massive insect still alive. It has endured everything so far, proving to be a formidable opponent, unwilling to surrender. Yukito stares at it confidently, declaring that this is its end, the end of its threat to him and the other adventurers. He then prepares for the finishing strike. Using the bee sting technique, he delivers a final, precise attack that splits the massive insect in half. The adventurers, who had been watching the entire battle unfold, noticed that the giant insect had been targeting Yukito specifically. However, they also realize that he is now stuck in a precarious position, with no clear way to climb out. Yukito tries to steady himself by stabbing his sword into the rocks to prevent further descent, but he soon discovers that the rocks are too loose. His sword slips, causing him to plunge toward the abyss. Just then, a rope is suddenly thrown toward him, and a voice calls out, urging him to grab on so they can pull him up. Without hesitation, Yukito grasps the rope, only to discover that all the adventurers who escaped the cave are working together, holding onto the rope as one, pulling him to safety. Thanks to their combined effort, they successfully haul him up from the steep cliffside. Yukito sits at the edge, taking in a moment of triumph, reflecting that he bet on luck and won. The adventurers then gather around him to express their gratitude. One of the women tells him that he saved all their lives. Another adventurer, still in disbelief, remarks that despite enduring such an intense battle, none of them suffered serious injuries. The entire group is overcome with joy, celebrating their survival from what should have been certain death. As for Yukito, he experiences something he hasn't felt in a long time, a deep sense of fulfillment. At that moment, notifications appear confirming that, due to the massive number of Deathcasters Yukito had slain, his level has increased by 3, and he has acquired a new skill, Warrior's Instinct. The scene then shifts to another location, where the gang member responsible for the entire scheme is in a fit of rage, destroying everything around him after hearing of Yukito's success in eliminating the swarm. His frustration intensifies as he realizes that Yukito didn't just survive. He obliterated their entire hideout and freed all the captives they had imprisoned there. He begins to panic, understanding that if things continue like this, he will be the next to fall. He knows that the big boss will not let him live after this disaster. Blaming Yukito for everything, he grabs a bottle of liquor, gulping it down in a futile attempt to calm himself. But ultimately, his fury gets the best of him, and he smashes the bottle against the ground, vowing that he will kill Yukito at any cost, even if it means sacrificing his own life. The scene then transitions to the Adventurers Guild, where Yukito stands in the center of a crowd, with all eyes on him. At that moment, Yukito realizes that he has become famous among adventurers due to recent events. The guild receptionist approaches him with a knowing smile, telling him that he has done it again. He has been promoted once more. The adventurers around him begin murmuring. One person exclaims that he's the guy who destroyed the mountain, while another adventurer, a woman, remarks that she heard he also saved a large number of people. In another corner of the guild, two guild leaders observe him closely. One of them tries to recruit Yukito into his guild, but before he can finish, the other interrupts, insisting that their guild is the better choice for him. Yukito struggles to make his way through the crowd, ignoring those attempting to approach him or persuade him to join their groups. He tells them he is in a hurry, all the while thinking to himself that he has no time for friendships or alliances right now. His main goal remains unchanged, obtaining the healing elixir to save his mother's life. Anything else, including friendships, would only slow him down. Opening his reward inventory, he reflects on how loot distribution in group battles is random, whereas for a solo adventurer like himself, the system ensures a structured distribution. Furthermore, the chances of other adventurers obtaining rare items are incredibly low, making him realize that luck alone isn't what determines his gains. Finally, he exits the guild, reminding himself that in his past life, he had always lived as a lone adventurer, and there's no reason to change that now. Later, he returns home, only to be greeted by an unexpected surprise. His family has prepared a grand feast for him. His sister excitedly tells him that he can eat as much as he likes, a rare luxury for their humble household. Yukito joins his mother and sister at the dinner table, where the atmosphere is filled with joy and gratitude. Together, they say their prayers, giving thanks for the meal before them. At that moment, Yukito feels the warmth of family, a feeling he had long missed in his previous life. He realizes that, despite their poverty, they had never once failed to celebrate their small family traditions. His sister Nozomi chats excitedly, praising him for his incredible feat. She tells him that now he is finally eligible to take on the challenge of the 20th floor, a remarkable achievement in itself. Their mother, however, looks at Yukito with concern, asking if he is truly okay. She mentions that the neighbors told her that the 20th floor trial is a turning point for any adventurer. Nozomi adds with a hint of worry, revealing that she researched it online and found that only 15% of adventurers ever reach the 20th floor. She even pulls out her phone to show him the statistics. At that moment, their mother intervenes, firmly telling Nozomi to put away her phone during dinner. Yukito reassures his mother and sister, affirming that he is truly fine. Then, he asks them if they fully comprehend the magnitude of the achievements he has accomplished in such a short time. His mother glances at the newspaper clipping featuring his photo, which she proudly hung on the wall. She tells him that she is immensely proud of his noble efforts to help the world. However, she then adds that she doesn't want him to push himself too hard, explaining that it is incredibly difficult for any parents to watch their child risk their life for others. At that moment, memories of his mother's death in his past life resurface in Yukito's mind, stirring deep emotions within him. His eyes well up with tears. With a strained voice, he tells his mother that it is just as painful for a child to watch a family member suffer from illness. His mother starts to say something else, but Nozomi interrupts her, insisting that there's no point in discussing this any further. She states firmly that Yukito has always been stubborn. Once he sets his mind on something, there's no turning back. Their mother sighs, deciding to drop the conversation, but she smiles and remarks that Yukito inherited his stubbornness from his father. Yukito continues eating, reassuring his mother once again that she doesn't need to worry about him. He assures her that he is doing all of this because he wants to and because it makes him happy. His mother and sister return to their meal, while Yukito watches his mother closely, reflecting on how he had been unable to save her in his past life. This reality remains a deep wound in his heart. He realizes that in order to erase that painful past and start anew, he must obtain the healing elixir at any cost. After finishing his meal, Yukito prays in gratitude, then prepares to leave the house to continue his mission. The scene shifts to the 20th floor of the dungeon, known as the Great Wall of Metaphysics. As soon as he steps into this floor, he notices that its design is vastly different from any other floor he has explored before. Suddenly, two bizarre creatures appear before him, making him realize that every monster on this floor is inorganic. Although this is his first time encountering such creatures, he immediately attacks with his sword, giving them no chance to strike first. He then ponders that heartless, emotionless killers, much like these monsters, pose the greatest danger of all. At that moment, he is ambushed by an even more terrifying group of creatures, attacking him from all directions. However, thanks to his combat expertise, he is able to counter their attacks and eliminate them with ease. He realizes that their danger lies not in their strength, but in their methodical and relentless attack patterns. Pressing forward, he reaches a dimly lit area where he spots a massive gate, but in front of it lies a pile of unusual rocks. emitting a strong red glow. Suddenly the rocks begin to move, taking the form of a colossal machine-like stone beast. Upon seeing it, Yukito understands that the key to victory lies in identifying the monster's attack pattern. If he can decipher it, defeating it will be possible. The monster launches its attack, and Yukito attempts to block its blows or strike it with his sword. However, his attacks prove ineffective. The creature's rocky exterior grants it immense resistance. Despite this, Yukito remains confident in his ability to overcome it, even though he has yet to discover the proper method. After carefully observing the monster's movements, an idea comes to him. As soon as the beast begins its next attack, Yukito leaps towards it, aiming his sword directly at its single eye. His analysis proves correct. The attack lands perfectly, delivering a critical strike that completely destroys the stone beast. Now standing before the massive gate that the monster had been guarding, Yukito steps forward and begins to push it open, determined to move forward. As he slides the gate's heavy doors aside, he reflects that this day marks a turning point in his life, the true beginning of his new journey. As he opens the gate, he steps into an immense hall, where intricate magical ritual circles are etched into the floor. Suddenly, the door slams shut with force, and he finds himself facing yet another massive stone monster. This one, however, is larger and stronger than the gatekeeper. Yukito scans every part of the creature's body, trying to identify any weak points. At that moment, the monster begins to move, assuming a stance for attack. He then realizes that this being is the ancient golem, the boss of the 20th floor, and that his opponent possesses an exceptionally tough body and immense attack power. After analyzing its abilities, he determines that its only distinguishing trait is its sheer physical strength. Deciding to take the initiative, he launches his attack. He swiftly dashes toward the monster, easily maneuvering past it, realizing that despite being the floor boss, its movement speed is quite average. He then attempts a strike with his sword, but the attack has little to no effect, leading him to wonder if it is even possible to cut through its body. Meanwhile, a gang member stands behind the door, observing Yukito and everything unfolding inside the hall. Suddenly, the magical circles on the floor glow red, and another monster materializes within the chamber. Yukito is taken aback to discover that there is another creature besides the boss. He looks around, trying to figure out the reason for this, then turns his gaze toward the door and realizes that an intruder is present. However, he is baffled by the fact that he senses no other presence, yet he finds no other explanation for what is happening. The idea that he has ended up in a double battle against two monsters by sheer accident or mistake is something even beginners wouldn't fall for. As he contemplates the situation, the gang member hurls a dagger at him, but Yukito senses it at the last moment. Despite the surprise attack, he reacts swiftly, deflecting the dagger with a single swing of his sword. At that moment, he becomes certain that this is no mere coincidence. Someone is deliberately causing this chaos. The intruder watches him with irritation, unable to believe that Yukito managed to block the attack and move at such speed. However, he quickly reassesses the situation, reassuring himself that Yukito's skills and agility do not change the fact that he holds the upper hand. He possesses abilities that give him a complete advantage. He recalls searching for information about the 20th floor online, where he had initially thought Yukito was reckless for deciding to go alone. Back then, he had read details about the floor and its boss, learning that defeating it typically required a minimum of 4 adventurers working together. Once he confirmed that Yukito had entered the floor, he decided to track him and force the appearance of the second boss, since the presence of 2 adventurers instead of 1 triggers its emergence. He chuckles, unfazed by the possibility of the floor boss discovering his presence. As a high-ranking thief, his level surpasses Yukito's, and all he needs to do is rely on his stealth abilities. It is revealed that he possesses the cat's footsteps skill, which allows him to move lightly and swiftly among monsters. Additionally, thanks to the shadow crossing ability, he can enter monster zones and provoke them into a rage before disappearing without a trace. For this reason, he is entirely confident in his plan's success, convinced that he can now leave Yukito to face both monsters alone. On top of that, he has the Cloak of Concealment, a rare S-rank item that significantly reduces the chances of his location being detected. He glances at Yukito, certain that he remains completely unseen, while Yukito continues scanning his surroundings in search of the intruder manipulating the situation. At the same time, the two monsters attack simultaneously, making him realize that this is not just an unfair fight, it is a 3-against-1 battle. After that, the intruder pulls out another dagger, coats it with poison, and remarks that if he lands a single hit on Yukito with this poisoned blade, the fight will be over instantly. He throws the dagger toward Yukito, stating that this way, he is gradually cornering him and that there is no need to rush at all. The dagger reaches Yukito and is about to cause him a serious injury, but it barely grazes him, leaving a small scratch on his cheek, just enough to poison him. However, the thief is immediately notified that the poisoning attempt has failed, making him feel frustrated as he wonders where Yukito could have hidden the antidote, especially since he is only wearing light armor. He quickly regains his composure, saying that it doesn't matter since these daggers were merely a means to keep Yukito under control, and he still has plenty of small, sharp weapons in his hands. He then decides to take the next step, throwing all those weapons at Yukito, emphasizing that he has always preferred using traps. After that, he tosses a set of small perforated spheres. Suddenly, the spheres begin to release a massive number of tiny arrows that spread in every direction, as he remarks that this trick alone is enough to guarantee his victory. Then, using the shadow crossing skill, he connects the hall's pillars with a web of barbed wires. It soon becomes clear that these wires are also electrified, and he explains that he has always relied on his traps, which have never failed him before. He then comes up with a new trick, saying that with so many traps in place, Yukito will have barely any space left to move. He adds that the only thing left now is for the two monsters to finish him off entirely. Sure enough, Yukito finds himself fighting the bosses of both the first and second floors, completely surrounded by traps, spheres, arrows, and electrified wires. At this moment, the thief feels immense pride in his work, reclining comfortably and stating that all he has to do now is enjoy the show from a distance. However, his smile quickly fades when he sees Yukito moving with remarkable agility, effortlessly dodging the traps. The biggest shock comes when he realizes that Yukito is looking directly at him while airborne. His shock intensifies when Yukito meets his gaze and, with a mocking smile, asks if he has exhausted all his tricks and traps. His face shows utter disbelief as he frantically wonders, could it be that Yukito can actually see me? Yukito then bends down to pick up one of the thief's daggers from the ground, remarking that he should at least respond instead of staying silent like that. He then hurls the dagger at him with force, sarcastically adding that the thief must admire him quite a bit to be pursuing him this persistently. The thief panics as he watches the dagger heading straight for his location, confirming his worst fear. Yukito can actually see him. Trembling, he demands to know how Yukito discovered his hiding spot. Yukito replies with a smirk, claiming he located him using warrior's instinct, pointing out that it is a well-known skill. But the thief erupts in rage, shouting that he's lying, questioning how someone with such low-ranked abilities could possibly detect a thief of his vastly superior level. Yukito readies his sword for combat, wondering whether the thief will flee or stand his ground. Furious at Yukito's mockery, the thief draws his weapons and assumes a fighting stance, warning him not to underestimate him or speak to him in that manner. Then, in a flash, he charges forward, attacking with fury, proclaiming that he is the superior one. But Yukito effortlessly blocks his strikes before launching a counterattack, knocking him to the ground. Yukito looks down at him with a confident smile, remarking that such words should only be spoken by the one who emerges victorious in the end. Wouldn't he agree? He continues his relentless assault, and with each strike, the thief's anger and frustration over his defeat grow. He screams at Yukito, demanding to know if he truly found him using warrior's instinct, before cursing him and once again accusing him of lying. Yukito replies that he is not lying. He does in fact possess the warrior's instinct skill, which he activated while in the 20th floor. It turns out that this skill allows the user to detect surrounding dangers once activated. When Yukito attempted to activate it, the success rate was less than 1%, but he relied on his luck, confident that it would work. And sure enough, he received a confirmation message. At that moment, he became able to see every danger around him, no matter how small, allowing him to pinpoint not only the traps set by the thief, but also the thief's exact location. The thief gathers his strength after being knocked down by Yukito in such a manner, then rises again to attack, remarking that he is far too fast for a warrior of such a low level. Yukito responds with a sarcastic tone, thanking him for the kind compliment before effortlessly blocking his attack again. However, the thief comments that despite Yukito's speed, he is still just a warrior. He continues confidently, explaining that he surpasses Yukito in agility and undoubtedly has better precision. At that moment, the thief manages to wound Yukito's arm using a poisoned sword, this time infused with a paralyzing toxin. Yet, a notification immediately appears, indicating that Yukito has successfully resisted the paralysis effect. The thief is taken aback by the fact that Yukito is unaffected by this poison as well. He observes him as the fight continues, acknowledging Yukito's skill in preparing for unexpected situations. Suddenly, Yukito surprises him with an incredibly high leap, vanishing from sight in an instant. In the next moment, he reappears behind the thief, descending from a great height and striking with his sword. However, the thief barely evades the lethal blow at the last second, swiftly moving to a distant spot, remarking that Yukito remains in a weak position, just as always. Yukito decides to use the bee sting technique, delivering a powerful strike toward the thief. But the thief laughs, admitting that it's an impressive and well-calculated attack. Yet, he cuts himself off and instead activates a combat technique known as butterfly dance, which allows him to move with exceptional agility and speed, making it impossible for Yukito to land a hit. Yukito pauses, bewildered, unable to comprehend how his opponent managed to evade him so easily. The thief starts moving effortlessly, attacking Yukito while explaining that butterfly dance is a technique that combines flawless offense with perfect evasion. He adds that in battles between opposing skills, victory always belongs to the one with the higher level and rank. With his movement abilities enhanced by butterfly dance and the speed granted by cat's footsteps, the thief manages to wound Yukito once again. Feeling proud of his temporary advantage, he begins to speak confidently, shouting at Yukito and declaring that a slow warrior like him will never be able to catch him. However, blinded by his arrogance, he forgets the need to remain hidden to avoid detection by the monsters. As a result, the floor boss spots him and launches a powerful fireball in his direction. At that moment, Yukito activates Warrior's Instinct to dodge the attack. The thief also manages to evade the flames, commenting with excitement on how thrilling the 20th floor is, before resuming his assault on Yukito. He then adds that he can dodge any attack from the floor boss since its movements follow a fixed pattern. He turns to Yukito and asks if he obtained this information from the guild as well. Yukito does not respond, and instead focuses on blocking the thief's relentless attacks, despite his injuries from the poisoned sword. However, he sustains another wound on his leg due to the sharp weapons scattered across the ground by the thief. The thief tells him that by now, he must have realized there are no unauthorized individuals in the 20th floor, meaning his defeat was inevitable from the very beginning of the fight. He then launches a fierce assault on Yukito, using a technique called Scorpion's Edge. At this moment, Yukito is severely weakened by his wounds and unable to defend himself. The thief then delivers a powerful strike that leaves him completely unable to stand. Yukito collapses onto the ground in a dire state, drained of all his strength, his weapon slipping from his grasp, rendering him incapable of resistance. At that moment, the thief feels he has achieved his goal, believing it is time to land the finishing blow. He lunges at Yukito, shouting that this is the end for him. Yukito lets out a scream of terror as the thief charges at him, seemingly about to finish him off. But in the next instant, he glances at the thief with a sly expression before sticking out his tongue, saying that he was just joking. Following this, Yukito places his hand on a stone nearby and presses it, causing the stone to glow differently from the others. As a result, the thief suddenly finds himself trapped in a transparent bubble, sealing him in from all directions. Stunned by what just happened, the thief, who was so certain of his victory, stares in disbelief and asks if Yukito just used a gravity trap against him. Yukito rises to his feet, picks up his sword, and remarks that the thief kept insisting there were no unauthorized elements here, yet he still fails to see anyone around. At this point, the bubble starts tightening around him, making it harder for him to even move his mouth properly. Yukito then explains that the information the guild collects is only relevant to the floor's natural state. However, no one in the guild could have predicted that someone crazy enough would interfere and become part of a battle with the floor boss. At that moment, the thief's condition inside the bubble worsens, and even breathing becomes difficult for him. He gasps, questioning whether what is happening to him is real. Meanwhile, the two monsters begin moving toward Yukito to attack, prompting him to react swiftly and block their assault, commenting that the double attack that occurred has altered the monsters' behavior and how they respond to intruders. He quickly evades their attacks with a precise maneuver. Then, looking at the thief with a challenging expression, he tells him that despite calling himself a thief, he was completely unaware of the traps in this place. The thief's frustration grows as he exclaims that this is impossible, that Yukito was supposed to fight as a warrior, not rely on traps. At that moment, after Yukito's quick movement, he escapes from the monster's range, leaving the thief as their sole target. Since he is trapped inside the bubble, he is completely defenseless, making him an easy mark. The monsters then unleash direct attacks on him. The force of their strike shatters the bubble, causing him to crash to the ground, his body covered in wounds, writhing in pain as he groans that the agony is unbearable. Just as he prepares to question Yukito about how he managed to do this, he realizes that the monsters have already grabbed him, lifting him with their massive stone hands. They then squeeze him tightly before slamming him into the ground with tremendous force. Gasping for breath, he mutters that even his skills in researching online didn't help him. He couldn't detect the traps hidden in the hall. So how did Yukito know about them? Yukito looks at him triumphantly and responds, telling him that, as he said before, it's all thanks to warrior's instinct. Then with a smirk, he asks if he hadn't already mentioned that from the start.